You're listening to the inaugural show here of Your Financial Path with Mike McGrath here on KHTS, your hometown station, at 98.1 and AM 1220. We're also live streaming here if you go to www.hometownstation.com. So I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Mike McGrath. Since this is the inaugural show, I thought I'd give kind of a quick rundown here of what we'd like to do on the show going forward. I'm a certified financial planner with EP Wealth Advisors, and I've been doing this business sitting across from folks at across their coffee tables and kitchen tables for almost 22 years now, and have found over a long period of time how certain principles apply to help us make wise decisions with our money. And the reality is that the decisions we make every day, if they're not about money, certainly money is a big part of it. So making good decisions and wise decisions and being financially healthy is probably obviously the goal that we would shoot for. So having all the experience I have, I thought to put the show together to create a community where we can learn from each other. I'm going to be interviewing guests that can tell their stories of how they've made decisions, good and bad and in between, and how that affected them. And that we can kind of share that together. Now, as we go forward, please feel free to contact me. There's a couple of ways you can get a hold of me. One is epwealth.com/Valencia. You can reach me on Facebook at facebook.com/epwealthadvisors, or just shoot me an email at mmcgrath@epwealth.com. So with that, I'll give you a little bit of background on myself. I mentioned I'm a certified financial planner. I've been in this business for 22 years. And I'm with EP Wealth Advisors, who is a registered investment advisor. We're a fiduciary, fee-only firm with offices throughout the western United States, including here in Valencia. Now, I grew up here and still live here with my family, and am looking forward to kind of bringing this community of Santa Clarita into the fold, if you will, into this subject. So, so my first guest, since this is a personal sort of setup where we're talking about personal stories, I thought I'd start with a personal interview. And so my very first inaugural show, I have asked my dad, who is Dr. J. Michael McGrath, to join us. If you've lived in Santa Clarita for any time, you probably know who my dad is, or at least heard of him, hopefully for good reasons. He has been retired now, but was with the Newhall School District for 36 years, 25 of which he was running the shop, if you will, as superintendent. He was also a big part of a number of different organizations here in town, the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club, the Child and Family Development Center, to name a few. So been involved in the community for a long time. As a matter of fact, just a couple blocks here from the studio is the Dr. J. Michael McGrath Elementary School, which, although I have tried to get people to believe that was named after me, never had a taker. So that was a gift to him when he retired from the school board, and he's very proud of that. So he's been involved a long time, but of course we read a resume and we think one thing, but there's decisions made along the way, right? So I was born and raised, as I mentioned, here in Santa Clarita. In my dad and my mom being a part of the education community. My dad got a graduate degree, sorry Bruins, but he went to USC, while I was a kid. And so making those kind of difficult decisions, how to pay for that, how to sacrifice the time and balance that, all of that is a part of the story. So tough choices about how to pay for school, how to raise kids. My mom stayed at home, for example, and that was an intentional choice, so for a period of time. So all of those things, and now, of course, I face that as I raise my own kids, and if we're going to have one of us stay at home, how do we pay for kids' college, and all those kinds of things. So a lot of these subjects come up. I'm sure a lot of you out there have faced or are facing those same things. So I thought maybe to bring in, Dad, thank you for joining me on this first ever show.
You're welcome. Price was right.
Yeah, that's right. Now, my dad this weekend, as a side note, will have the 41st anniversary of his 40th birthday. So he will be 81 years old this weekend. And so that puts you, if you can think back.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, well, I got to let people know. He remembers some of those dark periods, kind of late Depression into the World War II era. And so maybe starting back there, I know there wasn't a lot of people with a lot of money back then because of the circumstances. But how did you, growing up, how did money ever get talked about, or how was it viewed?
Well, it was easy. We didn't have any. But everybody we knew didn't have any either. So someone said, "Did you know you were poor?" I guess I did, but everybody was poor. There were no jobs. At that time I went to parochial school, so that cost a few bucks. My father was a prison guard. Now they call him a corrections officer. He called it a prison guard. Best job in town. I can remember. I think you talk about. Did we talk about money? No, we didn't. Other than we didn't have any. But I can remember my father was at a prison in Ellenville, New York, in the Catskills, and we lived in this little town called Napanock, which is an Indian name, I assume. He used to get paid Friday, and we used to go. He was in a guard tower, and we would take his lunch to him, and he'd lower a rope, and we'd hang the lunch pail on it.
Oh my gosh!
And the lunch pail would go up on the rope to the tower, and coming back down would be his check. So, and Friday night we usually had oatmeal. That was what our meal was. But as I said, everybody was in the same boat. And,
so it wasn't really about any conspicuous consumption. It was really more survival at that point.
You were lucky you didn't starve. But it was, as I say, everybody was in the same boat. My cousins were, my friends were. Even my friends whose fathers were professionals didn't seem to have much more money than I did.
So then growing up with that, as you got older, you've graduated high school. You've come to California first, right? Graduated high school. And you're going off to college. That's kind of your background. I mean, would you say there was a particular view that you had of material things, not just money per se, but material things, or just a value that you attached to it or didn't attach to it?
We came to California as I was going into high school. We moved here. We drove across the country in 1951 in a 41 Ford with a trailer behind us with everything we owned in it. And we were coming to California, and my father didn't have a job. We were just
so you just took a risk.
Took a risk at my mother's insistence, because he always, during World War II, he was stationed at Port Hueneme.
Okay.
And we came out to visit him before he shipped out, and so he always talked about, we need to go to California, need to move to California. And my mother would say, either shut up about going to California or let's go to California. His excuse was that he wanted his sons to go to college, and in New York, where we were living, it was not inexpensive. There were a big public school system, and private schools were expensive. And in California, believe it or not, it was free. When I went to school, I paid student body card, health card. That was it. And got out in 4 years. So the reason we came was education.
Okay.
I was a decent student. At that time, I played ball, so that was kind of my motivation. But I was a decent student. My brother, who was a year behind me in school, majored in fraternity when he went to college. So he never graduated. But he was one of the family that actually made a lot of money. Lost it all, but he made it.
Right.
So college was an expectation. It wasn't I was supposed to go to college. So when I graduated from high school, I went to college, and I was a pre-med. And I was confronted with having to drop physics because I was going to fail it, and getting a C- by the skin of my teeth in chemistry. I pretty much learned I was not going to get into medical school. So I decided I'll be a dentist. It's harder to get into dental school because there are less of them. So I ended up doing what I loved to do. I was a political science major. Worthless major. It qualified me, I think, to go to law school, which I didn't want to do, or be an air traffic controller. I wanted to go work, be in the Foreign Service, work for the State Department. So I went back east when I graduated. I went back east to Georgetown University, and I had saved enough money that when I was back there, I really didn't need to work. I worked a little bit for a senator, helping him write speeches, but other than that, all I remember about Georgetown is there were a lot of girls in Washington, D.C. It was gone to heaven. But when I came home from college, I wrecked my car, fell asleep in Arizona, went into a ditch, and I wasn't insured. So I'm home. My car is totaled. I don't have a job. I'm not going to be in the State Department because foreign language was not one of my gifts. And so I was actually thinking about being an air traffic controller. And I was broke, which is a common thing with me. My mother was a teacher. She taught in Newhall School District, and she said, they're going to pay substitute teachers $22 a day. Well, when you don't have any money, $22 a day is a good thing. So
Anything above zero?
yes, $5 a day would have been great. So I went, got interviewed. They hired me. And a man wanting to teach elementary school is a big deal. So I can still remember the first day, third grade, Peachland School. And I don't have a car, so I'm driving up with my mother. We lived in the valley. And she said, you don't seem too nervous. I said, well, look at it this way. I'm bigger than they are, and I'm smarter than they are. And she looked at me, she said, you're bigger than they are. Well, by morning recess, these kids figured out I didn't have a clue. So I went next door to a teacher and said, help. And they gave me some things to do. And I found out I liked it, and I was pretty good at it. So I decided, well, I'm going to do that. So by the time that year ended, I had a long-term assignment in a sixth grade and went back to school to get my credential.
Well, it sounds like going back to the beginning of that, to come out of the situation that you grew up in, that the family dynamic or the value was education will improve your lot, or at least your options, as you go forward. So now you're fast forward a little bit. You've got the job. I know in the years following you met Mom, which I'm grateful for. But as you got into that and you started going back to school and getting the master's and the doctorate, how did you and Mom deal with, I mean, did you have, I imagine, shared values? Because I'm looking back now as a father now, thinking, okay, Mom decides to stay home, so her income's gone. You're now paying for graduate school. You've got two young kids at home. What values did you guys share that kind of helped you get through that? And were there, conversely, points or values that you disagreed on that made that even more complicated?
Education was a high priority for both of us. I was a principal by the time I went to be really, when you guys came along, I was a principal by that time. And they kind of hung in front of me that, gee, you could be a superintendent, you could run the place, but you got to get a degree. And I said, got a degree? And they said, no, you really don't have a degree, you need a doctorate. And back in those days, the place to go if you wanted to be a school superintendent was USC. It was pricey. I hate to tell you, when I first started there, I was paying $47 a unit. When I ended, I was paying $72. Now I think it's $600. But I was a good student, and I had the aptitude that if I read something a couple of times over, I remembered it. So I'm really good on tests, which I could pretend I knew something because I could do it for a short time. It's gone, of course. It's like a sponge, rinse it out. So, yeah, it was a sacrifice to do that because we had young children, and your mother quit teaching while you were young. I think she went back to work when you were in sixth grade.
Like that.
And so, yeah, that was important to us. And we had saved some money.
Okay, I was just going to ask you how you covered the cost.
Saved money, borrowed money, pretty much saving. And when we just gave up things. We didn't go out much. We didn't go on vacations.
Okay.
And the money went to school.
So those things were sort of bent to the will of, hey, if we want to advance, this is kind of the path we have to go.
And both of us had the same set of values. So it was, she was really good about it.
Okay. Well, and then even getting past that, I looking back, and I mentioned earlier some of the organizations you've been a part of, YMCA and Child and Family Development Center, those didn't exist prior to you. And not only you, of course, there was a lot of people involved, but you've always been very prodigious in giving, mostly of time, but of resources. Just mostly community things, and even today, you're part of universities that still teach and train and mentor the next generation of teachers. So Mom is still tutored students and things. So you guys have always given of time to do that, sometimes professionally, sometimes volunteering. But above and beyond family obligations, career obligations, what was the driving force behind that kind of thing?
Well, it was a growing community then. I just felt an obligation, incentive to be part of the community. I knew a lot of people in the community, most of whom are dead. But so it was to be a part of a growing community, and there was a need. There were not a lot of people who were willing to put in that kind of time, and it was got valuable contacts with people who were movers and shakers in town. So it was. I was raised, I think, probably to serve. My parents, with their limited options, they were givers too.
Right.
So, and a rich brother, so it was I could do that
Occasionally.
Well. He was rich once in a while.
Right. So then, and to this day, if you look back, I named three. Are there others that because I know there were others, I just don't know that.
I was active in the Kiwanis Club or this auditorium, because I'm the one that made it a warehouse.
Oh, when you were superintendent.
Well, the rules back then was you got this square footage, it counts.
Yeah.
You got to find something to do with it so it doesn't count as classroom space. The way they set it up then, that big auditorium was classrooms. Well, it isn't.
Okay.
So we converted to a warehouse, so we call it something else. And so we raised about $100,000, and we replaced the roof. And I look at I think $3 or $4 million that they put into it now, and I thought, geez, we were naive that we could have fixed this place up for $1,000 for over a short period of time.
Okay. But the theme, though, was just every little place you could find, you wanted to get involved.
There were a lot of opportunities to serve here because there was a lot of new, and
Growing
everybody was new.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody just moved here.
Okay. Well, I'm going to leave it there. We're going to cut for a quick break in here, and then we'll come back with a few more kind of final questions and kind of sum this up. This, again, is Your Money Path with Mike McGrath on your hometown station, KHTS, 98.1 and AM 1220.
Daily Imprints is the premier one-stop shop for custom embroidery, screen printing, and promotional products in the Santa Clarita Valley. Owners Joe and Dana have provided KHTS with quality embroidered company shirts for over 3 years. If it's new business cards or promotional products you need to enhance your image, Daily Imprints is the choice for you. Located on Lyons Avenue, stop by or call today, 661-678-0508.
Your building sign is essential in getting customers to your location. Feathers can help get your business noticed. They walk you through each phase of your building sign project, providing special attention to detail and quality. Feathers will give you a sign you can be proud of. Your building sign will draw customers in instead of having them drive by. Feathers on Soledad in Canyon Country, across from the Edwards Theater. Or go to feathersphoto.com. That's feathersphoto.com.
Do you ever wonder, am I on the right path? Is my money working hard enough for me? I'm Mike McGrath, host of Your Money Path on the last Wednesday of the month at noon here on KHTS. I'm a certified financial planner and partner at EP Wealth Advisors, a fee-only wealth management firm here in Valencia. To find out how you can get on the right path, visit me, Mike McGrath, today at epwealth.com/Valencia.
At Advanced Audiology, we know how important hearing is to you, your loved ones, your work success, your safety, and your ability to stay in the game. Most people won't admit hearing loss to themselves or others. We make it easy for you. Today's digital hearing aids come in a variety of styles, including invisible. All feature-rich, providing unparalleled hearing quality, wearing comfort, and automation that simplifies your life. Don't be fooled by our imitators. There's only one Advanced Audiology with the purple sign next to AAA on Valencia Boulevard.
Men, are you feeling tired, stressed, or just don't have the energy you used to? Did you know this could be related to decreased testosterone levels? Luckily, there's a safe, effective solution. Weeder Prime helps support healthy testosterone levels with clinically tested key ingredients. Just 2 capsules of Weeder Prime each day can help change your mood, energy, focus, body fat, and lean muscle. Feel the way you felt 10, 20, even 30 years ago. Rediscover your Prime with Weeder Prime. To find a retailer near you, visit WeederPrime.com. That's WEIDER Prime.com.
Santa Clarita's hometown station.
Now FM, 98.1 FM and AM 1220, your hometown station.
Welcome back to Your Money Path with Mike McGrath here on your hometown station, KHTS at 98.1 and AM 1220. I am Mike McGrath, your host, and we're picking up where we left off with my first interview on this inaugural show of my father, Dr. J. Michael McGrath. And we left it where we were talking about just the values that he learned going from growing up during the World War II era to how they helped he helped save money to go to school, even through graduate school, and raising a family, and some of the sacrifices and the decisions that went with that. And I think that's important because as I sit with my clients and I sit with just talking with people in general, we're all faced at some state and in some place in our lives with those kind of decisions, where there's really not necessarily a right or a wrong or a black and a white, but just something where we've got to decide what's the highest priority. And what is that value or those values that we want to live out. So money is really a tool, and it's a tool that we apply to those values to help get where we want to go. So translating that back to where we picked up our story, the value, and one of the big values was to not grow up poor. Now granted, part of that was just the circumstances and the time that you grew up in, but to give yourself the opportunity was this idea of save as much money as you can, get as much education as you can. And even though you might be fair to say you've kind of tripped into education, you found what you loved. And the combination of doing what you loved and getting the education you needed to do what you wanted to do in that field gave you the platform then to be involved in the community. So that might be a part of our takeaway today. I thought I'd take a kind of, if you will, a step back as well, just for fun here, and ask a few questions, which I'd like to ask every time I have a guest on here. So not just about you, Dad, but more broadly
Everything's
speaking.
about me, isn't it?
If you could have one person in the world, anybody, get their finances in order, who would it be?
Probably now would be you.
Are you saying they're not in order?
That's what I was supposed to say, isn't it?
No, that's not a good sign. Yeah, cut. No, just kidding. No, think of any public figures, anybody that you think and the idea here is, and as I said at the top of the show, as the mission, if you will, that I'm on, that EP Wealth Advisors is on, is to make everyone that we come in contact with healthier financially. And the idea is that if you make healthy decisions, it obviously benefits you, and it probably benefits the people immediately around you that you love, right? So you made decisions that benefited me and my sister and Mom and so on. But if we collectively do that, then we actually can improve our community. So the idea is I'm going to create a community through this show to help us all become a better community by making better decisions. So it could be a very wide swath of people, a public figure.
I think I'd let Bill Gates mentor me. He would.
Okay. I think Bill Gates could mentor a lot of people. Of course, it does help to know how to, deal with creating windows and things like that.
When I took my computer apart, I could put it back together.
See?
I connected everything correctly. So it was
fair point.
Very progress.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now narrowing it back in a little bit to you, the next question would be, what is the value? So think if you can narrow this down to one, not that it has to only be one, but one value that you think has helped you the most with money. So making money decisions, a value that you've kind of carried with you, that the story that we've kind of shared today, that might have guided your path here the most.
I'd say probably good planning.
Elaborate on that. What do you mean?
That you decide based on your interests and your what you want to do, and then plan on how you're going to get the funds to do it. I probably did more spending than investing. The money we saved was always for a purpose, and it wasn't
like for paying for your doctorate, that kind
paying
of
for
thing?
my doctorate, paying for my son's college education.
Thank you.
I remember your sister asking me how come she didn't have a college debt, and I said, because your mother and I have a college debt. We had promised that you would you would go to school, not necessarily free, but that we would pay for it. And the only departure from that was when your sister got her master's degree, and it was a full-time program, and she
Right.
couldn't work.
Okay.
And her thing was, Mike went to Pepperdine. I went to San Francisco State. Somewhere there has to be an evening here someplace.
That sounds like my sister.
Anyway, but I think planning ahead and then estimating how much it was going to cost to do it, and then doing it.
Yeah, and one thing I'll interject there too, because it's almost this idea of paying it forward, right? So we've had the same attitude with our kids, and we're doing everything we can to help them through their college. We've, as you know, three technically, until a couple months we'll get it down to 2 into college. It's painful, but
Never goes away.
The interesting thing is, and this is to my own fault, but not too long ago, my wife and I were having dinner with another couple, and we were complaining about it. I'm complaining about what you just said. I want to save more, but I'm spending money on this tuition and books and room and board and all the things that go with it. And she kind of chastised me, as you know my wife can do, but in a good way, healthy way. And she said, well, we set out with exactly what you said. She said, we set out from day one that we wanted as much as we possibly could to help the kids with the college so they would have little or no debt, at least not so much school debt that would inhibit them from getting ahead. So she said what you were witnessing is a spent money, but it's really, she said, it's really invested money in them. You're investing in a person. And so it's funny, here I am telling people all the time professionally all these things, and I had to have someone tell me the same, right? So it's the doctor who smokes, I guess. So so we all have that, sense, and you can kind of emotionally get off track sometimes. But just kind of a personal story there to go with that. I think you pay it forward, and we've told our kids, if you're ever able, when you have kids, to kind of help through that so they can get where they want to go. So that's a good one. So okay, so you kind of said this with Bill Gates. So scratch Bill and go with somebody else. Who is the best person you know with money, and why? Like, they handle it the best? And again, we can go public figures, someone you know personally. It's a wide swath of opportunities here.
Since I don't know very many people with a lot of money, it's a difficult question to answer.
It doesn't have to be a lot of money, but just how they handle it. Whether they handle it, their low income really well, or they just handle their wealth really well.
Yeah, I'm not sure handling wealth, but I think of your friend, Cameron Smythe.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's I think planned very well. He's got a family. He's devoted a lot of his life to public service. So he'd be a good example. And I knew him when he was just a basketball player who couldn't play defense and shoot.
No, that was me. He actually could play defense.
No,
and shoot.
actually, his father told me one time when you were on the same team that when you checked in, you were in range as soon as you walked off on the floor.
Well, I miss consistently. Yeah. How's that? Okay, well, that's fair.
If you don't shoot, you don't score.
Yeah, Cameron is actually someone I would love to have on the show. So maybe one of these shows I will grab him on there. We can elaborate. Okay, so a couple of questions, but again, focusing on your situation again. If you had a financial decision you wish you could take back, I don't want to call it a mistake necessarily, because I know your response to that would be, I don't make mistakes, right? But
I can't think of one. But
yeah, but if you could take one back, and again, hindsight's 20/20, right? Mm-hmm. And I ask this question because I think a lot of people out there listening at this moment, people I talk to all the time, just again sitting across the proverbial kitchen table. Sometimes it's just circumstances that happen to us, but when you kind of go down a path and you turn around, and you're like, you know what? If I could do it over, fill in the blank. Not necessarily a mistake, but it could have just been something that if I knew, what was the phrase? If I knew then what I know now, then you kind of fill in there.
About 10, 12 years ago, we redecorated our house. And if I had to do over again, I probably wouldn't do some of the things we did.
Because it was expensive, or
It was
because
expensive. I mean, it looks great, but it probably could have looked really good, and I could have settled for really good rather than great. But it was a yes, dear moment to your mother, and I would say we're probably bearing fruit now, because as we say, we're moving. We're selling our house, and it's selling quite easily because of all the things we did to it.
right.
But probably if I had to do over, I would have spent less money doing it.
Okay. And so did that hinder you at the moment, or is it more just you felt like you weren't going to get enough of that money back, or both?
Probably both. And it was probably then that I think we did an extensive refi of the house, and we probably should have spent, instead of spending money, we probably should have invested more of it, and we didn't do that. So we ended up later in life relying more on credit than we probably should have.
Okay. So here's a good one, and we've kind of talked
It's about time
this.
we had a good one.
Yeah, I know. And for those of you at home, it's like this all the time, just so you know. It's an Irish thing, I guess. But, and again, narrowing it as much as you can, but I'll leave this open-ended. So going back again to how you grew up, those formative years before marriage, as you putting yourself through school, all those years, grad school, raising kids. And I'm going to lead with something. I remember a neighbor, when I was a kid, got a new convertible Mercedes across the street. Mm-hmm. And I think I was in high school. So I thought this was the greatest thing ever. And I said, well, how come you don't do that? And you kind of laughed. And you said, because I have you.
You're right. That's what I did say.
So, but it was in the sense of a positive thing. Like I have just a different set of priorities. So, and that's not to say you can't have, all of that, I suppose. But if what is the most important thing and it could be a couple things, but to invest in, and we kind of touched on that. It's about family and things. But if you could point to a thing or two, again, even correcting something you did before, or let's flip that the other way, something you're proud of. Like, what do you think the most important thing to invest in is?
I think the number one thing is your children, because they're going to, all things being equal, they're going to outlive you. I'm not sure that will always happen because I intend to live forever, but I think that's number one. And I think the second thing would be invest in your community, not just money, but time.
Yeah.
And I think that pays dividends when you do that. But I think number one, invest in would be. I did not run my own business, my own personal business, as well as I ran the school district's business. I ran the school district's business very well, and it wasn't my money, but I took a great that it was taxpayers' money and my friends' money and my fellow citizens' money. I did a real good job with that. Matter of fact, the teachers' union would probably say maybe I did too good a job on that because I was quite frugal in investing in them, perhaps.
Yeah, we can go on a few stories on that.
Yeah. But it was, I think family community is the best thing. And that could be both time and money, either way.
Right, yeah, because we do know, as I said earlier, money is a tool. Your time is a tool. Material things, not just like cash, they're all tools. And so you're saying that
cash is good.
Cash is always good, right? So I think I would say, kind of in breaking into a bit of a summary here, and we can go into some of those things a little bit more in depth. But some of the things we always ask at EP Wealth Advisors, I always ask when I meet someone for the first time is really what's important about money to you? And commonly I get it's not necessarily a tangible answer, if I can say it that way. They may say something like, well, security, or something like legacy. I want to, like you'd kind of alluded to a little bit there with family, right? Then we ask them to elaborate on that. But I think the idea here, as we go through that conversation, sort of you've talked about it in hindsight, is this notion that I think when you make financial decisions, that you first and foremost have to have a proper perspective. And that perspective doesn't necessarily mean something's right versus something's wrong, but it's more the idea of what am I about, what is our family about, what do we want to accomplish. So in your case, as an example, we really needed to accomplish the doctorate in order to get the job that you felt you needed to have. So I had that when I started my business. It was I really needed to get the certified financial planner designation. So we put a lot of time and money into that to get to where we wanted to go. So that was a part of that. But also, I think the perspective gives you the ability to do the one thing a lot of us have a hard time doing, which is to say no. So it could be saying no to a purchase, like I'm not buying a convertible Mercedes because I'm paying for Little League.
Not building a swimming pool.
That's right. But it could also just be saying no to something like, hey, we're not going to go out to dinner for a little while we finish this doctoral program up. Hey, guess what? When we're done, and then we'll have a great time. We'll go out to dinner more often. So temporary sacrifices. So perspective. And then I think that perspective then also gives us the ability to persevere in it. So to be successful, I think, financially, and I don't mean this necessarily in building great amounts of wealth a la Bill Gates, but just being content and being okay with where you are financially, it takes some grit. Right? Getting that education is gritty, right? And my son right now is finishing his college education and going through the last, oh, by the way, you're missing one unit and you need to enroll in this other class.
You're always missing
So
something.
it just takes some perseverance to go through. You don't want to do it anymore. He's kind of done with it. But we're kind of encouraging him to keep going through. So building a business takes a lot of grit. It takes making that extra phone call or meeting that extra person and that sort of thing. So, but if you have that perspective, and you have that goal in mind, then your financial decisions get bent towards that more valuable, if I can say it like this, that more valuable will. And I think that's important. So as you look back, and even as you look forward, if you were sitting down, if there was your grandchildren or someone of your grandchildren's age sitting in this seat between us right here, what are 3 things maybe, and you can go to 4 or 2, but what are 3 things that you think would be the best advice to give them as they sort of launch through college and into their life, just like you were back in the day?
Plan. Try to decide what you want to do with your life, and that is more than just career. It's what role do you want to play in the community? What role do you want to play in your church? What role do you want to play in a business? And if you get those things kind of organized, the rest of it's really kind of easy. I think if I had to do over, I probably would have invested more in like stocks and business than I did. But I think part of the thing of growing up poor, even though I didn't know I was poor, you probably are more of a consumer than probably was advisable, and I think I probably would have been more of I saved not to invest. Well, I shouldn't say that. I saved to invest in myself and in my family,
Right.
rather than in tangible assets that would produce income
Okay.
when I'm older.
Okay.
So I think that's probably basically what I would say.
Pitfalls. Think about this generation too, right? The old joke with millennials is they're too busy backpacking across Tibet in order to, which is a stereotype, and I don't mean that seriously for those millennials out there, but there's sort of some stereotypical baggage that goes with that group, right? Just like every generation has to sort of shake that off as they grow up and into their formative years. So, what pitfalls would you avoid? So we're planning ahead. We're deciding ahead of time what's important to us about what we're going to be involved in. And I think those messages for most of the millennials I know and I've interacted with, a lot of my clients' children, my own children, would definitely be on board with all of that. But what are some things that they might want to consider avoiding, traps to fall into?
I would, and I don't know if I'm phrasing correctly, is avoid spending your resources on pleasure. I know young people. I never was a great vacationer. Vacations eventually bored me.
Okay.
But so
That explains a lot. So
that's why we didn't go a lot. I liked my job, so it was hard for my wife to get me away from my job. I liked it, and I enjoyed doing it. So I think you can I think overplan I think you can make things more difficult than they have to be, and you can make them. You can spend resources on things that aren't going to last.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. Kind of have that they say the long game in your mind all the time.
Well, yeah, when I was in my early 20s, I did not have a long game, and I don't think most people in their 20s have a long game. I think my long
True
game
point.
came at about 65.
Okay. Well, Dad, I really appreciate you coming in and kind of helping me in the first show, and I appreciate all of you streaming in and listening in here. Again, this is Your Financial Path with Mike McGrath. I just thank you for joining me for the inaugural show, and this is KHTS 98.1 and AM 1220 and at hometownstation.com.
Come join me, Arif Halby, for Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. Every Tuesday at noon, we uncover ways to help you manage your money, get out of debt, and prepare for your retirement. That's every Tuesday at noon on Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. Are you not sure if you can retire yet? Listen to us and learn about tips for savings, retirement strategies, and so much more. That's every Tuesday at noon on Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour on your hometown station, KHTS.
If you're tired of your nail polish chipping a day or two after an expensive manicure, then you'll love the gel nail polish manicure now offered by Ann. Ann is a licensed manicurist serving the Santa Clarita Valley in Canyon Country for over 15 years. And now she's offering the gel manicure that lasts without chipping for up to 2 weeks. Log on to hometownstation.com for details on how to get an amazing deal on gel nails by Ann on Restaurant Row, or call Ann at 250-8340.
If you're in danger of losing your home to foreclosure, you need an expert. Hi, I'm Rich Sherman with Alta Realty. I've helped hundreds of Santa Clarita residents save their homes completely for free. I've got just over 20 years experience and a loan modification success rate of over 80%. I can negotiate better terms with your bank, and I can save your home from foreclosure. And again, we do this completely for free. So if you're in any danger, please call me today at 661-714-1400. That number again is 661-714-1400. I'm Rich Sherman with Alta Realty, and I'll be happy to help you save your home for free.
Now FM, 98.1 FM, and AM 1220. Your hometown station.
Welcome back. You're listening to, or watching if you're online, Your Money Path with Mike McGrath. I am Mike McGrath, your host, and again, appreciate you joining me here for my inaugural show. For those of you who have just joined us, we've been interviewing my father. As part of my first show, I wanted to kind of make what is a personal subject and how we handle our financial affairs properly by having if you will, a personal interview. The idea of the show, again, as I said at the top of the hour, is really the idea that money touches everything that we do. It has an influence on every decision we make, and if we do it well, then we would be a better parent, a better spouse, better employee or employer, a business person, a community member, which is something we've talked a lot about here today. And when decisions go bad, it's not just me that gets hurt. If it's my decision, it could be my family members. There's another side of that coin. It could be those around me that I care about. So the idea of the show is to interview people of different walks of life here in the community, kind of their financial path and how they have done well or not, because we all have those stories both ways. Sharing my own stories as an investment and financial planner for over 22 years. I'm just, again, sitting across a lot of coffee tables and kitchen tables and having a lot of different conversations that go from in the weeds of how to pick a stock to child and family counseling to marriage counseling. So I've been through a lot of it. But the idea really is we want to help people make the best financial decisions they possibly can. So as we go forward, not just today, but on future shows or in between shows, if questions pop in your mind or you want to ad lib on something that's been talked about, you can reach me in a number of ways. The first would be epwealth.com/Valencia. Facebook, you can reach me at facebook.com/epwealthadvisors. Or, again, you can just simply email me directly at mmcgrath@epwealth.com. So, and again, epwealth.com is a fee-only fiduciary firm. We have offices throughout the western United States, including right here in Valencia, where I was born and raised. Graduated Hart High School, College of the Canyons, and now I've, interestingly enough, had my kids go through the same path as they grew up here in this community as well. So interviewing my dad and going back to you, when you were my age, or even younger, when I was a young little whippersnapper, as they would say, Santa Clarita was a really small town. What's interesting today, that Santa Clarita, per the Economic Development Council, is now the third largest city in Los Angeles County. Of course, L.A. being number one, which would be obvious.
Long Beach
number two, and we're number three. And for those of you who live down south from us here in say, Long Beach or West Los Angeles, we are not near Fresno. We are just a few miles north of you. But the town, my point being, the town has grown from, I don't want to say backwater, but a 2-lane road kind of a town to well over 300,000 people.
Actually is a good word.
I'm trying to be nice. I remember growing up going to what we used to call Bunny Love with the William S. Hart baseball fields, and McBean Parkway was just a little 2-lane road and an onion field. Mm-hmm. And in harvest season, you had to roll up the windows because the onions would actually make your eyes water as you drove through.
Absolutely right.
Now that's Granary Square and the Santa Fe condos and this sort of thing. So as that relates a little bit to our conversation, and as we kind of conclude our hour, when you started as a school superintendent, correct me if I'm wrong, but Newhall School District was 3 schools.
3.
And when you finished, it was 10 schools. When I was in high school, we had 3 high schools. Now we have 6 high schools. So as the town grew, your responsibilities grew. That's hence this community involvement. And also the budget requirements for the district got larger. And so as your responsibilities, I should rephrase this, the weight of the responsibilities professionally and personally, as that growth happened, weight on your shoulders, how did you make adjustments to that? Was it fairly simple to just kind of scale what you knew about how to budget and how to plan, or was that something that as you grew it became more complex?
It became, I think the responsibilities became more complex, but the idea stayed the same. My idea, and it really started when I was a building principal, is I thought the Newhall School District could be the best school district in California. And I had a responsibility and a desire to make it such. So I always had that goal in mind. So because I would say there's Saugus, Silversteins, Castaic, they're all fine school districts, but they're not Newhall. And that was the attitude I have. And I think my skills grew as the community grew. And it was such a great place to live that the fact that it was such a great community, I think, sold the school district, and I think the school districts sold the community. It was kind of a symbiotic relationship. So it was, I wouldn't say it was easy, but it was manageable.
Okay.
And I always thought, if one thing I can do is I can manage.
Okay.
And I had good people around me, and I had the fortune of having good people around me, and I used them well, and they used me well. Had good school boards, people who were dedicated to the community and the school district. So in that way, it was kind of easy. And the few little difficulties I had along the way, they were along the way.
Right.
And you went through them, and then they ended.
Right. Well, and I bring that question up kind of relating to the subject at hand here about dealing well with our financial decisions, in that I know with us, when we started, my wife and I, our date night was walking to the 7-Eleven and paying 25 cents for a snow cone. We got 2, and we went for a walk because we literally only had 25 cents apiece. But we look back on that with fondness. The simplicity was great. And as you grow, though, and life goes on, you add children, you add a promotion or whatever it might be, it can get more complex. However, the goals, we talked before about perspective and the values that you have, those don't change.
The bedrock stays.
The bedrock stays. So you may get some different counsel along the way. You can file your own tax returns when you're making a couple bucks an hour, but then when you do better, maybe you hire a CPA, that kind of a thing. So I just want to finish with maybe with an encouragement. So I'm glad you answered the question the way you did, because otherwise you would have completely thrown me off. But the idea being that the values and the perspective that we start with, that kind of it's become our lesson of the day here, those don't need to change. So as life gets more complex around us or in our own situation, or good times and bad times come and go, the values and the perspectives stay constant and kind of guide us along our path. So with that, I'm going to leave us here for today. Again, thank you for joining me. Again, this is your Financial Path with Mike McGrath, and you're listening to KHTS 98.1 and AM 1220 and hometownstation.com. Thanks so much.